당주 그는 네 몰람 디셈제 담제라 가르가르 고구에나 위에도 고야게 차상 디던의 주버쇼스 몰람 제디 디고 슈거레 제상 그 생각도 가르 슈버레라는다 저기 냠다 셈제 rob meken digelia namdu jigen gon me ba digelia gon du gwa da an pa so jige chong da de ne zhe de galia ji guo chi ji de lob den jigen gi ji de bon gyu ya yu wa sho se mo lam jia ya ne ga zu chu tin ma ji pa ru de lam galia ga ju zhuo se me ba ne de lia ne sam ba gyu wa sho se mo lam jia ya de ne chu chung jo yi na an da ji den ma cho ro ji ne den ma zhu sin zhu ro da gyuriya da de ne kya cho yi na 되는 바지 링 주신 챔피언 규르시네 봐 안직 봐봐 그런서 가와 조고에는 되는 봐 예지네 그런저기 되게 주야다 동아세야게 되니기 샘제게 강아디게 세투베게 되다디 규로쇼세야 그런서 그요 고야 가르고 구에나 디나신 규로쇼세야 도시 모남자에 세데 기생아서 디고 쉬르와 이제
Good evening. Last week we continued to look at the third chapter in Bodhisattva's way of life. And here there are verses of prayer being expressed that may we fulfill the needs of all beings, whatever those needs may be. The beings of feeling they are unprotected, may I be their protector. For those who journey by land or by sea, may I be their guide. May I be their very material support. In other words, these prayers are expressing an aspiration that for all those who seek to, for all those needing to be led on their journey to enlightenment, or as well as those needing guidance through the ordinary world, may I be a guide for them.
다 말하다 아니 디기 두개 나서 여바 인자 다 전주 셈바다 상예기 지게 상예 남게 셴기 동아시에 될이야 안지 동아 디망에 세인 디세기메세 요마라도 동아 체숑가래 이나 강아 가래네 디강아데 바세야다 아니 그런소래 지 내가다 탈도 디기가 내스고이나 그런저기 최다 튠비기 아니가 지게 그런저 고야기 무인이스 튠바데 가라가라 고요만 디스 차상거도 두야기다 튕긴 주야 강아세기 로치야 디 차상 직게 산제다 전시선 받음지기 두치는 차례나 내가 뒤로 디 인사다 뭐바다 대단디 제투버쇼 세드 말음제 거봐
Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, they are guided by their love, compassion, and wisdom. And with such guiding consciousnesses, they do not discriminate between beings in terms of either how a being relates to them, whether they relate to the Buddha or Bodhisattva as a friend or foe, nor do they discriminate between who is more or less worthy, nor do they discriminate between wanting to help in certain circumstances but not others, or in certain ways and not others. Rather, these beings guided by love, compassion, and wisdom help in all ways, wherever they can, in accordance with the needs of beings, fulfilling their material resources, the necessities of life, as well as providing guidance to attain freedom from suffering.
xianlia kane chi roba chena che tuyegi niba chi kubo da niba di goya la manzo semgi tene nangbo ne dushin samno na le dus si samdang de dinegi niba de sa go ro chi san mo lam sho se di da ngan ju gi jinga ju gi dan xiangi tene le roba dingi chi tubo sho san bi samdang de ko ni di 참절 ma so na ko ni di chi gi se be chi tubo sho se be samno ye de mo lam ja de digi gengi and mo ba na 디기 제 투에게 뉴버야디 아지게 대구 쭉 투에도 용거를 받이네 자다고 간제레 디네 몰람 같이 잡나 몰람디 제가 마망 기디네 개체 몰람리야 개 충주면 뭐 같이 개체나 도시에 자고래서 전주선바디기 도스게 잡는 거래 지난 전주선바디 몰람 잡네 몰람디 뉴버 용서 속바데 가와리게스네 Genju Sempa Sajuba Leo de Denim, Sajuba Dele Leo de Denim, or Monamgi Gabi Nubati Shazan, Zorjin, Nia, Jevul Mincho Jungo, Regina. The Dibado, Genju Sempa Sama Juba Mado Bardo Monamgi, Chukamna, Monam Chazang, Nubo Yoso Zoba de to go mother. Molam Nuba Yonso Zoba, Chasawa, let to your mother. The two are just Chasawa, Nuba Yonso, Chasana, that me de Gawa Nuba de Kazi, Tigers and Ligors and Sajuba Leon, Sajubi Semba.
Prayers such as these serve an important purpose, because for us they are really just a mere aspiration, but they serve the purpose for us now to widen our perspective. Because as one develops spiritually, when one enters into the Bodhisattva paths and eventually into the Bodhisattva grounds, one's capacity to be of outstanding benefit to others in ways that seem inconceivable to us now, this grows and develops. So by making prayers such as these, we are widening our perspective, preparing our mind, developing our understanding for what will one day be possible. And in fact, it's when the Bodhisattva reaches the 10th ground, the final ground, that these prayers they've made, they have the capacity to fulfill. So therefore, prayers such as these are important because they develop the breadth of our imagination, developing the extent of the Bodhisattva activities we will later express.
Dinigi Genju Sempa Negaso, Molam Dostine, Jiza, Dumbashaki to Banyama, Genju Sempa Gable, Molam Jag and Scarisne, then Jig Zambulia and Jig Jigma, Telmasona, me Jig Tel, but Setun Droyada, and me. Jige Cetron Droya, the nigger and the Jignomo, but the Pashu Church Droya, the nigger Nima Asura, the nigger Ganga Yudu Kabla, Nadelia, and Dumbasanje, Gaso Cho, to get number Dunje, Yawalen, Dunje, and me, Consolia, and Jige, Semjanti, Pandoche, to Basho, Sevigita, Molam Ya, Resio, the Molam Lucian, Jason, and Molam Jumbi, Santinizam, Sanje Jumlendi, and Celo Jabico, so Nema to mitigate Cheringbu. And the dinner, and take twinking the gun and made among Buyorwada, the eagles of that San Yashan that he paid you, Chering Boda dinner. That in Mamma, you do that, Cherma Tung Road, then as I had to the young of Ganga, Huji, Gale Jaboya, Gale Jabne Raboyata, and the Jing Michas and the Jig Bear, Yomo, Boshuk, Chembo, Truxin Chembo, Tuboya, Manja, Lasopata, then the Jig Dusin, Yomo Shuk Chembo, Yugabla, the Nigi. That's unusual. The Nindo Fuji, the Nekanga Yuendelia, Nadina Sanyi, and Chogo to get number 20, and then Cochuia, Consulian, Gangati, set to shows Molam Javanza, San Yujim, and Silla Jabicos to Chile, Chogo to get number 2 Pevaris or that.
And in fact, we ourselves are experiencing the benefits of the Bodhisattva's prayers, the Bodhisattva who went on to be Buddha Shakyamuni. In a previous life, the Bodhisattva who would go on to attain enlightenment and appear in our world as Buddha Shakyamuni, made the prayer that when lifespans are shortening, when afflictions are strongest, then may I appear in the world and turn the wheel of Dharma for beings who still have the capacity to cultivate the Dharma within, but whose needs are greatest because of the degeneration of the time. So because of making such an aspiration when as a Bodhisattva, later when as a Buddha, when those outer conditions were met, he appeared in our world and turned the wheel of Dharma. Other Bodhisattvas made different aspirations, and when they turn the wheel of Dharma, maybe at a time when beings have the greatest capacity, for example, the greatest capacity to be able to cultivate the Dharma, the afflictions aren't so strong, their lifespans longer, and so forth. So we are experiencing the benefits of the aspirational prayers that the Bodhisattva who went on to eventually become Buddha Shakyamuni, that Bodhisattva made.
아무도 din ma shue dira ling due nyela ling da ne marme de la marme da nemal de la nemal da da ne lu jin den de ba kun yi zhen du ju shuo.
And turning to the text, the 19th verse. May I be an island for those who seek land, a lamp for those in need of light, a dwelling for those wishing to rest, a servant for all beings who require service.
Da ling dun dun yawa namla ling du gyuwa shuo se de. Chisa ling se de nga zuke sashi ane chike deniki chenpo deniki sura. Da bina nga zuke gyaso nang pa chik zhuo ina da dusin dang zhuo na dine taring buchi gyaso chik kanga che de deniki da chisa dunya dike zo dine chuti dunya zo che dine pa nyinga kanga che de deniki inza dine che yo de da din ma gyaso ka ling du gyur che ling ten saji kampo ling du gyur che ne an dele ya an chike zixing da me do da jebo la sopa saya punson sopa yoba ji gyur an dele konzo de pa chu de pa di de dele de che dine konzo de ji pe che na da ganga semje de pa shi dunga de pa shi da an ling del pa le le chi de je da kon so long je ge saya dunya da dine ge punson sopa yo di dine ji konzo le di gi yo konzo ge ganga se da 아니 그런서 사야도야 강함이 비디기 용어야 데니기 용토와시 용어쇼 세비다 링도냐 남래 링도 교와쇼 세데 두치는 만한 얘기로.
This verse builds on to what the verse immediately before this, the 18th verse. The first line here is, may I be an island for those who seek land. So here one can imagine in days gone by where people, usually merchants, would travel by ship across uncharted waters. At a time like that, they may well experience tremendous fear, especially when the fresh water on board is running low. They maybe even have run out of food. So when beings are experiencing worry and concern, may I be a place for them to rest. May I be a land full of all that they desire, so as to ease their worries, ease their concerns.
돈에 용구래 되네 디멘비게다 진지게 넘기는 사지면나 차고 휴지 뭐 잡제 되네 강하게 돈에 나저기 돼서 지 취마 디면도 되네기 링텐도 교진데야 강하세야 안 되네기 다 사제 말하간 돼서 메간데실라 안 지링도 교진 고도 돼서라야다 되네기 안데 돼서는 건조 강하세 안델이야 네델에 되어지는 지시나 로도 분노 소바 예전 코로스텔이야 롱주 코로스 디기용화쇼 세디 루신에다 링드녀다 가제 자선나로 조지네 안지기 강아 체지 링디 사지 감보지 말아지 되네 강아 체되바 이네 혼돌에 사지 고고에나 디 사지 링디 교화쇼세 나 자선나레 멤버이나다 양직 차버 침베게도 출로 대표 주요 강아지는 직도서 매버 링면에 대소리는 안데 되네게 사지 동바 링도 교르시는 혼조 강아 세워쇼세나 디 멤버게다 안 저기 담이 되서 매바 사지 되네게 강아 체는 되서 사자 링도 교신 될래 되서지 되지는 혼조야 안 혼조 강아지게세 링될래 되지는 혼조게 되기 분수 소바 용어쇼 세데 강아 세야 된 되기 주야 돼 되기 주야 되는 용어쇼 세다
Lines in verses such as these, use them to inspire your imagination, thinking of various ways to be of benefit, to ease the suffering of others. So further to imagining the worry and concern of those traveling uncharted waters, one can imagine in times of extensive flood, when people have nowhere dry to stay, where their home has been washed away, perhaps they themselves are struggling to stay afloat in water. There, imagine beings with such perilous conditions. May I be dry land that's safe for them to stay, and not just somewhere safe for them to stay, but with all the required resources such as food and drink and so forth. May I be a land full of all that is needed. So in this way, use verses such as these to inspire your imagination to think of ways to benefit others.
la semje ngara zuge mi denige dösa ling mara dösa meba ling dondo nyewa dikilya an ling denige ling jiraba na konzo ling mara we kanga de sigor wada jisada ling de rawa na konzo zuge donda drup dele neje konzo zuge da jige saya tuya lo soba da digi tuye tuje yungor ba jisada semje ge dunga se ya na digi tuya la ling mara we dunga de pa se an dele ling de rane den dele ling de neje konzo ya an digi Lusim digi tuge yongwa sho sadi da dusin manam yunnan go rejire.
Yeah, one expresses the meaning behind this prayer being expressed. May I help all beings, whomever they are, to ease their physical suffering, to ease their mental anguish. And as with this line, if they require an island, may I be that island, and not just something that will do, not something that's barren and desolate, but a land that provides all that is required by suffering beings. And in these ways, ease the physical and mental anguish that beings experience.
Ta marme de la marme dans, ta marme de na la marme kyuwa shos. Ta just a marme de se de da marme se de ngan ju da jige lo margi du sin shumar lo so ya de ro cheme ro shi ba da we ro shi da kan ji do na la da ni marme se da ngan ju de san lo we na karina la chu ro da ni ma ne marme se de di ka su marme ma do me ro. Dine zada dine ki chen le ya an so so ki pa zu draw ne chen serip na ni mi ma thong je draw sa ma ra kanga che chung ro kanga che na so so ki de sa de le ma tho ba kanga yung ro an dine zada shen le ya chen le ro ba che wa sam ne mi ma thong an ra shin ni ga le mi ma thong kanga che ro ba che ma tho ba yung ro an je za dine ki che ma tho kanga da pa zu draw ma de kanga an chen ne de wa de so so ki da 지게 최 자야게 베제라 로야 데브로 로제 두신 냠는 제와섬다 데 로야 자야네 장 미마통하자 데니게 자야 말고 고가 말하면 데네 강아 중고로 제가 데네자 데니게 강아 유엔 디게리아 말메도 규르체네 말메기는 왜 용어 규제 건설사 아니지 문바티기 파 세제스 세네 에너지게 코로나지게 가와 조고시네 파주 조디 코로나 lep세텔 레투바다 코로나 중에다 현야 지표 로봇제와나 로봇제 투야 안 코로나 중 최이 냠는 제약이 되니기 지고 데벨롭에나 로투야기 되니기다 소소기 딱 문비 팁제 마통와 강하지 강하 여바데 당가 가르쳐 그래다 직지 투미는 아 조에 조고 다미 마통 조투 삼마는 아 레스 삼마에서 나샬 직 로봇제와나 레가 제고서 다미 마통 와서 다 통문도 가르쳐 그래서다 직 뎁지 로고서나 다디 미 통은 직 장고도 통문도 선배 샘제다 강하디 제가 말매도 규신디 강하 차선 세바 쇼스 강하디에세 디네 강하디에세네 코로나주 된다 아니 부지 코로나 가와 조가나 조서데 레데 안가데 레소선 베디기 요야다 안 소소게 셴야 지 로봇제야다 펜버드네 강하디게 세투에기 루시미 디기야 소소게 안 지기 최 냠는제 베지디게 바 뎁디기 로제 연데 냠는제 투바디 소소게 야 데네게 된다 주투바디 데네게 용어쇼 세디 다 말메도 바나라 말메도 규르제스다 다 대산은 가서 외도 규르제 다 채나고는 니마셔게 메바자다 외도 규르 데네게 말메도 바나라 말메도 규르제네 현재 강하세야다 디기 주투에 지용어쇼 세디 도시는 말람자리.
The second line builds on this theme of looking for ways to help beings, recognizing the various ways that beings experience hardships, and expresses the aspiration, may I be a lamp for those in need of light. So this is, of course, composed centuries before electricity was thought of. So it refers to oil lamps or butter lamps and so forth. But in one's own imagination, one can certainly refer to electricity. But what it comes down to is those who are in need of help and assistance. May I help them in whatever way is required. So when you think of those who are in need of a lamp for light, we can imagine those traveling at night, especially on a night where there's a no moon. Then it's really difficult to see. And especially if one imagines someone needing to travel at night alone, how the dangers of the journey are pronounced when the road is dark. And here one expresses the aspiration, where beings are in need, may I fulfill their needs in the most ideal way, in the most appropriate manner. And may I fulfill all their worldly needs, but also their needs for Dharma, the needs that will lead them to liberation. So may I also light the Dharma for beings, enabling them thereby to see reality. So here we take this line, and what all ways to benefit that arise within you, express this in aspiration. Imagine yourself easing the suffering of others, helping them overcome obstacles, both those ordinary obstacles that beings torment beings so, as well as obstacles in their Dharma practice, helping beings see the correct way to practice.
the paso draw do kablia sarip che and combatia draw combat sarip the name maton and the paso draw do kabla in those naboros to door chadu take markang was with ma team dorata and it was cover reducing the company the chunal park with Zuyada, the Negamore, on the Drosabatic Lara Paso Drada, and Jig showing over long draw, then Paso drawn to combat the Saripture, Nano the Gangama, who didn't even go there. So that this that my men may be Makangati, Tanganju do some daddy, silver as simply a 10 order. And I was been in Yama Combal de Cabrita, and the Sena only a Sarip, didn't choose Jabokubas, some tenor, Marantia, the Shingan, a legal Julie or lawyer, where your mother no one about sauce did legally or Wakan. This and Dinigi, my men may be a kangaroo, to Simolam Jadu, Dinigi Gandhi, young to this Lulba, Silver, gent, when she were.
For myself, when I read a line such as this, I can relate to my own lived experience when artificial light was just not existent. So I have real lived experience of this. For example, in my village where I grew up in the Himalayan mountains, when people would journey at night, well, they'd get up early and set out on the journey early. But if they hadn't arrived by nightfall, the journey became very dangerous. So we didn't have the problem of thieves and the like. But when one struggles to see the mountainside, it's all too easy to fall down into a ravine, or if crossing a river in the dark, to fall into the icy water. So these were real dangers that people experienced. And then when I was a little older and moved to the monastery in South India, we'd have periods where you had to work in the fields. And when we returned from the fields to our dwelling in the monastery, by then it was often dark. And we'd be walking sometimes in when there was no moon, in the pitch darkness. Then we would stumble and fall and walk into things. So certainly at times like that, we would have certainly a wish for a lamp, for someone to be a lamp for those of us who were in need of light.
Andosia, that in a Nemal de la Nemal dance, the name said, Kamba, that Kambas or that is a Nagasian to give Kashila, Kamba Meabache, and the Kambi Ganga, Mungur Vadans, Denigi, Desa, Meava, Denigi, Nimet Tawach, the Tawi Ganga, just another Kamba China, Kamba Nala Tuition, Tawi Ganga Setuyana, Denigi Chava Chava Gasa Meava, and Deni Chabi Ganga. Dini anjige lung suta dinige thona kanga dini yuwa za chiza dinige ne me ya kangbo me gen digilia dinige kanga yudu ya kangbo gyurche ande sa kangba da kangba am da wo su ko semje dun ro ine da de sa ko so chakbu ro da dini ro da dinige ne ko so ge ne de gyurche ne ande so ge kanga dini cha ni me cha yu dong ha 안 차비게 추 차비에 동아 안 되네게 되사 말에 강아디 파세지 강아디 파세 네 강베디 나 되시 코로나 중에 안 지게 네 르리야 디기 요야다 안 강베디 디날야 도시는 직되시 코로나 디기 주야기 되는 요쇼 사다 안 디멘베 나지게 아직 강바메 되게 곰야워서 참가를 메되면 디니 강아디게 되 강아 디게 될야 강바규 코로나 되나 쇼시는 내 곰냠들이 야보제제 야보용 도와 주어서야 디니게 단네 세야된 네 강바 매간줄에 디네 강바규제 코로나 중에 강바메베 강아디 세 디나레 네신 코로나 중에 리심 디기 차상 주투버 쇼서야 돼 누시는 뭐는 비교로다 네 세야 돼
The aspiration to ease the suffering of others is then expressed in the third line as a dwelling for those wishing to rest. So here we can imagine that in the times of searing sun, to be able to provide cooling shade to those in need, or in times of torrential downfalls or icy winds, to be somewhere warm and dry for those in need. And not just for humans, but for animals too, perhaps sturdy trees or caves to provide protection from animals from danger. And here the aspiration again is to be a protection to others or provide protection to others in times of danger. Also in times of earthquake or landslides, may I be a sturdy home for those in times of such danger.
나 말세디 니 둘로서 예세 둘로로 시시고라 제사다 니니게 아직 내 주변에 디나래 진담시 장고에 아직 마살 디야기 된다 둘로 요야 둘로 고고와 제사 디네서 디네기 명한줄이야 디니게 내 가서 말 둘로 예세다 디니게 고에 된다 예세라서 받아 그래 고고이나 디니게 규르치는 코로나 중에 강하게 세투어쇼서 세네 코로나를 디기 중화쇼서 도시네
So what's translated as a dwelling also has the meaning of clothing associated with a home. So here one can imagine also providing warm clothing for those in need, especially when one imagines that the weather is quite extreme and perhaps very cold or icy. Providing warm clothing for those in need.
다니 류제 아니 전도바 군이 전도 교화쇼 세리 다 소소라 류젠세 셈젠세 오다 셈젠 술이야 그 요보로 셰주주엔 로봇지 요보로 고요베나 제 차상을야 안딩이 나 안디게 되쪽에 안지 제 요보 규세 아니 건축이 건축 강화세 도와줘 세드만하게 그러 다니 류제 전도바 세드 셈젠 코로나솔야 쉽주의 요구 고유바 강수 고유나 고헌디길이야 나 군지 안전을 교와줘 아니 건축이 아니 쉽쉬쉬 건축이 요구 교와줘
So just with the third line, rather than warm clothing, warm bedding would be a better translation. So one imagines when providing a place for others to rest, to also have to provide warm bedding for them. And then the final line, a servant for all beings who require service. So here, wherever someone is in need of assistance, may we provide that assistance to them, such as for the old and the infirm, but for whomever is in need of assistance, may I provide that.
나 디네기 전요 주로 쇼세디 뭐하지든 삼나야 전요 어세디 삼다이 녀마기 샨다기 미션데레 전요 꾸제 강아쇼다지 두체쇼레서 베삼로 조로 받아가서 난디 디나 삼다메레 디나 직부 차고 말에 다디디 소수 모에네 아니 제허세 제한세디 욕세디 거의 쉽주간데 시에서주는 쉽주간 가서 레가레가로 와다 두르와 지산 전요 어세디 류신군라 아니 제요 고바남라 시되다 네바 냠타 네요메도 로봇이 메린 네바디겔이야 아니 가야 콘줄리 네요 규주 콘줄리 쉽지 레가레지 콘줄이 강화세 투여기 디네는 코요 그때 네바 코로나야 레가가데 최고나 거기 디디제 쇼라바 나신 미 콘줄리야 쉽지 레가 제제 아니 미 콘줄리야 안지지게 지게 레가레 코네 네디게 사주 콜리야 그 강한 세야다 그 디기 줍투바 용어 쇼세데 지산 제요세데 네발다 보셔나 네여기 네여 유심 네 거죠 그 강한 세야다 관리 디기 줍투바 용어 쇼세 숨거로.
This final line, a servant for all beings who require service. So the word that is I've translated as servant is the word for a slave. So in some translations, you'll find it as a slave for all beings who require a slave. But the word, whilst the word slave is used, that is not the meaning here, because a slave is someone without free will who offers a service without doing so voluntarily. So the meaning here, rather, is to offer service in the role of, say, an attendant. So it comes down to someone who voluntarily offers service to those in need, and doing so with a motivation to help ease the problems of others. So this is the meaning here. So it does not mean the word slave.
that never meant that can go that the nigger that or chicken meeting, the robber meeting, the Sulia, and the consulia, chicken, ship, conjugate that robber chair conjugate, and to Lucia Ganga say to it. To show this not gonna say the consulia or Dangalia in the robber chicken, in the Yakuchanga, dig to Chiki, I would do some biggest consulia, Semia, Gadi, dig to a show, said the nigger, can go the nigger. romantically robot da dina xin da na zui bu chung chung lu xin ne chung chung da da do chi me kan de su ya da do che robot la so ba ni de ge da ga che le da yo zhen yo se de na zhe ge da ba ji ge ji ne ni jie lu xi la ben da de de lia lia xue bi xu kan robot kan ji ge wo shuo si bu da.
So then this final line comes down to offering service and assistance to whomever needs it, whether they are young children or old people who are old, whomever it may be that needs help, that needs assistance and care, may I be there for them.
Denigi Robochewa Mangura Dini Haji Yaji Lamado, Denigi Haji Yobene Desule, Shipshu and Gorwada, Denigi Shipshu and Jigge, Roboche, Shipshu, Koransuke, Shipshu and Koransuke, Shalia, Chi, Deagi, Delia, Pandoya, Putu, show said, Sister Angeleda, Ganichilia, Simjan, Ganichilia, Koranzo, Roba, Shaken, Ganichi, Shipshu and Roboche, Kuya Bene, Nadelia, Shipshu, Conjugate. 그 쉽주간 차제 이 코로나 대바 나신 코로나를 쉽주 코로나 강아지에 세세 코로나를 디기 주토쇼 세지 뭐는 게 그러다.
The expression in this final line is may I be of ideal service, or may I be of ideal service to whoever needs service. May I care for the young in the way that the young children need to be cared for. May I care for the old and the infirm in the way that someone who's weak and feeble needs to be cared for. May I care for those who are ill and need close support. May I attend on spiritual teachers. In other words, all who require assistance of some kind at varying times, may I offer ideal service to them.
어디니게다 도신다 샘정하줄이야 지게 강아데 직자 말아 연구로 와다 강아 직자 말아 요바자다 강아 세디에 탑람 라마라 연구해 봐자다 지산다 강아 링 지사지 간보메 링이 돼서 강아 사지메야 될이야 사지규야다 사지메베 강아 데네 안데 지게 채나 공례 미마통하다 내가다 가르지 지게 나홍 제제디 데네게 강아 데네게 돼서 데네게다 지게 돼서 강보메베 강아 되수연나 될이야 비주다야게 되네 지 가서 유지 니샤라소바 데네 말차시도 데네 예시라소바 디나도 유지 차상 공부로 하다 데네게 지 유지메베 강아 아니 도시네 데네게야 지게 소소에 돼서에 강바에 니제에나 다 소소게 지 내바치네 지 칼라야서 마도 강아이디 데네 안 강아세 로고치야 고고로와 안디나지다 내바메나 야줄로 첨보겐 거리네 양 차상 소소랑 내가 제마도디 안디 델리아 로고치야 고고로와 and the Puchunjura in a society Tungan Saya Tunata Diana, Chick Denigate Gama Robochen Gorwa, and Dinashi Danzuki, Jiong Miktata Megata, and Chicken Chet, Umbutunja loss of Robocarina, Goya Jungura, Denigim, and Denigata, all the Denizatanga, Dedan D. Cursion, Ling de Banam, Ling de Cure, and the Tekanga Sea, and the Jiggy. Near the Banam, near the Cursia, Neko Kangase, Digutuya, then Marmia de Banam, will go on Talia, Mumba, will do Cursion, and the Mumba Sage, and the corner of Digutuya. Then the near Kangba Mezula, Kangba the Cursion, the Konto Kangase, Digutuya. Then a Kangbi and Yuban, the Yuja, Nicheta, then they get Jalati, Shasan Meva, this will Cursion and Guyana. And that didn't get Sandio and Ganga chatting at the corner of Jima doing the Nipa Robert Chejo Consul, Ganga said to yet and dig you to the Jomar show, said Dusine, Monam, Yunangor, what that Dusin changes and Baconos, Monam, Duskin or Hechere.
Here we make prayers in the manner that the Bodhisattvas do, expressing from our hearts the wish to ease the suffering of beings. Whatever problems or difficulties they experience, whether their suffering is slight or intense, may I be precisely what they need when they need it. For example, as we have in the verse, for those in need of land, such as an island, may I even be that with all the required requisites to ease their problems and difficulties. Those in darkness in need of light, may I be a lamp for them. Those who need a place to rest that's safe and comfortable, may I be such a dwelling for them. And whatever kind of care and assistance someone needs, whether they are old, whether they are young, whether they are ill, may I be there for them precisely in the way they require at the time that it's needed.
That you want ma. Ishin Norda Bumbasang, Shinga Trupda, Menchenda, Basam Kini, Shingdada, Lucian Namdu, de Jurgurus.
Then the 20th verse. May I be a wish-fulfilling jewel, a vase of plenty, knowledge mantras that accomplish an effective medicine, a wish-fulfilling tree, and a wish-fulfilling cow for every sentient being.
Ishin Norbos. That I is no Gurusha send you doing to wash us. Ishin Norbos said that Rimbuchi Chik. Ishin Norbos, Ishin said the Sosuga Samanashin, Nobu to you by not delet in the Sosuga Samanashin, Dunda, Drup to Yagi, Nobu Sigurda, so Samanashin, Drup to Yagi, Novushi, or yes, Novushi. One D Gurushin, and Simjen, Koron to let Nobu Gurushin, and Simjengi. Koranzo Ganga Kare, Yovana Ganga de Yipa, Seche, Koranzolia, and Tunjin, Jigge, Gawa Tubiata, Suset said, Neagapta, Nega Lusim Diguya, and Shelia Pendo Drutuya, and G. Tarbata Tamji Kembegia, Gonjola Cho Puya Yuji, Gangare Naji Koranzoli di Ishinobu Gurjide, di Ishinova de la Di Junji Konsolia, the near Ganga said to Waji, Konso Ganga Seada, Konsole Diguya, Konsole Gezas. Gava Sunam Sai, Gohabravadi, and Guashu said. My Corons, Sunam Sai, Gohabra, she also Najin to be Gursin.
May I be a wish-fulfilling jewel. So this, the Tibetan, he has 3 words, the third being jewel. So the first is literally like they wish. So something like that, like they think, like they wish. So in other words, what a wish-fulfilling jewel is something of great value, in that it fulfills every thought that beings have. In other words, so that's quite literal. So something of great value, so that's the jewel, that fulfills every wish of beings. So that's the wish fulfilling, every need of beings. So in other words, what is being expressed, whatever problems and sufferings and difficulties that beings experience, both physical and mental, may I eliminate them. And not only may I eliminate the problems of beings, may I help them accumulate merit, because it's through them accumulating merit that their problems will be overcome. May I fulfill all the problems, help beings overcome all their problems, both directly and indirectly.
아주 돌로고거래 새도야 칼라고거래 네 모자고거래 파주 캠캠지야 고거래 니네게 소식에다 지게 메주 다야다 지 다마라 고거를 봐 세상하고 이신의 이라 삼바딘이 고거 수 이기 되고로 되어요 봐 세상하고 링위망고 야고 쉬베니 디사상 주투고로 우이들 때네 안지 모자뉴 두고래 안돌로뉴 두고래 칼라뉴 두고래 강관뉴 두고래 파소 줘야 돼 참여 줘야 돼 세상지도 이신 넓어서 디나신아 저기다 지기 세라다 데니게 도시 팔아요 봐나 디수 저기 종무진에 딜레데 소수기 가르가르 지게 고해디게 차상 주투야지 두고를 받아 세상 대상하고 우이스 예딩에 들어와다 이진 노버서야 되지다 림보치 되는지 요래서 림보치 지요 림보치 돼 대해서데 림보치 되는기 지요 바이나 림보치 될라 되네 안아서 가르고구나 몰람자요 되네 림보치 될라 되네 안수도 내지게 된다디기 줍투구리 해야지 숨고로 와다 이진 노버서야 소수게 이세는 소삼바 소수게 삼바 가르고구요 바이네 노버 될라 되네 줍투구리 해야지 줍투가 노버지요 돼서 세상아 In the
same way that if one has a large number of jewels, such as diamonds and precious metals, such as gold, one will have an abundance of material wealth and therefore can have sufficient food, clothing, a home, a nice car and holidays and so forth. Therefore one will be able to fulfill these material needs. But if one lacks sufficient material resources, one may be in dire need without sufficient clothing, food, or somewhere safe and comfortable to live and so forth. So here the aspiration that is being expressed is through this prayer, may I fulfill all the needs of beings.
야와 이신노로 시고 저나단 야와 이신노로 쓰는 야와 세대야 관 야와를 무조건 녀마 베기 개보 나두신 라마 야와 이신노로 라이도 되자 난 야와를 무실에 되네 아주 지가로 쉬네 람데 야음지가 람데 나지가 소리야 지게 나 디기두야 류기 SM 디기두야 단 개비 냠는 개와 탈바 탐지 김보고 모두 유념된 제투야 기디기 주투야 안디 마제 겸실 남들라 되네 나와서 베베기 지소한 호라서 베바 지소되게야 혼자 튕긴데야 지 강하디게 주투야 세투야다 되네 용어서 야와 이신노고세데 베베기다 야와 이신노고세 이신노고세데 뜻은 거 나고 할 겨울철에 미 야와 이신노고세데
While it may seem a bit of a quaint, wish-fulfilling jewel may seem a bit of a quaint idea, actually it's one of the titles that we have for His Holiness the Dalai Lama is the conqueror, the wish-fulfilling jewel. Because it's recognized, firstly, the conqueror is referring to him as a Buddha, someone who has completely conquered the afflictions together with the seeds and imprints. And here one is recognizing that because he is a Buddha, a conqueror, he can fulfill all beings' wishes at an ultimate level, through the Dharma. By teaching or illuminating the path, he can guide beings to attain liberation and enlightenment. So this term is actually used as one of the names for the Dalai Lama. He's often referred to as the conqueror, the wish-fulfilling jewel.
아니네 나디서 메디오시네 이신노비용어 규르치네 동아세도 와셔서 다 본바상 세대다 본바상 세대다 내내기 날 리모치 띠르기 강비게다 본바상 보세다 본바상 보센 띠르 첨부 본바세야지 시고래 가질래다 본바 첨부지 임바질래 디나야 안지기 리모치 띠르다 말아 유티 차상 유에디 본바시오다 데니기 본바상보 세대 다 림보치 릭 망보 유바 봄바디 가디 봄바 유바자 다 델레테네 아니 아직 대시 림보치를 때네 소수기 디기다 고대 차상 죽투고로 디나진다 림보치 릭 다마르 유디게네 봄바 데네기 봄바디 가디 봄바 상보바 야보데 디 유바네 델레테네 아니 아직 고대 차상 죽투고로 ninzanda bomba sangbo sideda bomba sangbo sen deji bomba sangbo di ani gyurjene sengi garozu konzo debege kanga jikanga debaji yeche teji goya digi drupjene dunga seada an digi drupje tubar shunga shosets.
A vase of plenty, this we should understand just as being another way to express having the capacity to fulfill the needs of beings. So one can imagine a jeweled vase that is filled of precious substances, all of which one can utilize to fulfill the needs of beings, to help them overcome problems and difficulties.
Terbum siangado kudan nanglo puyada disi terbum basin bumbachi dine chike dinalia anjik seada ngueda sada da mara lujin bumba juyu chik dine chupchen din chik kunal puyodwa sine disa terbum se dinashirwa da chi bumba sansi de rimbo cheta de bato me ba kantu bumba chimbo sigurwa Jesa terbum la dina de se da ngue da sa da chi da ma churu da ma lu do jesa di lu yo de delia de ne ge lu jin terbum tu go wa terbum jesa dina she da bomba sangbo se de bomba chenbo dine chi ya rimbo chi rik pa to me ba ye de gen ge rimbo chi bomba sangbo se de ne bomba de yo ba da rimbo chi yo ba se de le de ne an tu yin ma chi ge tu ya da an ga se tu ya yong go wa.
And such a vase of plenty is similar to wealth vases, which are still used, and these will also be very ornate and beautiful, containing many precious substances. Again, the symbolism behind this is that it fulfills all the wishes and needs of beings.
Denigi nga sa nyamne drupne shenlia jige pando tuyage shengi dunga seada ganga seada digi tuya anjige nga ru chi capture dine nga drup dine nga gi thone shengi dunga seada digi tuya shongurwa dine za denigi nga drubi ka tu ringa denigi nga drube zulia denigi goyage zeyi rik da mangu gugurwa dine kang goba dige chaza denigi gyurshene and Guam, and the Sosorana, the nigger ringa, Dukengi, the nigger Gurche, Shengi, Dunga Seada, Shengi, Digi Tutualia, and Tutua Show said Smore. Ringa Tup said.
The second line, knowledge mantras that accomplish. So this we can understand then as mantras which help others to overcome their problems, sufferings, and difficulties. So through the recitation of such mantras, may all the substances and other needs that beings have be fulfilled.
Sonana nga shiore sonayagi sonajai nga shiore dinga de sajine yadi jikje shiore jikjene sonaza jagore ane sonaza jaya da ane jige gangba chaba da laba chaba ne jipa shiore ne nga jaya la soba da dine nga je manga je nga ju jaya da dine ge nga japje dusine menjure je never jaya ge tablam dine chiwa dine ge jaba ya wo yongore da dine za ringa sede dine shungor wada dine ge ringa tubi thone nga sabe thone shenji dunga seada ganga seada digi tubi di yongor wa dine zada chungsal ma sone dine shwa de dile min beda jige ringa tumne jige ji ringa tub dine ge thone ganga mangbo seada digi tubi yongor wa.
When I was young and we're living in the mountains, we didn't have access to modern doctors and medicine, but what we did have is skilled people in our community who knew knowledge mantras, and therefore, when we had, for example, someone had toothache or a broken bone, then through reciting of specific mantras and blowing the mantra onto the wound or the broken bone or onto where the tooth was sore, healing would follow. So this was experience. This is what I've experienced in terms of knowledge mantras that accomplish. So these were very effective medicinal techniques that were used.
아니, 대소 판도 연구를 지나 데니기 돈에 두고라 다 대사다 하지미 면주에다 멤버 지게 야보유에자다 대소 대사시라 비주시요 말다 지나다 대사야 지간 주기 가시다 지게 이시에 갈 하고로 와데 자기네 맨나선 이시에 제도에 갈 하고로 냐마네 현다 탑시 가야요 말와 면주 현다 탑시 메도 될야네 nga sahan jungo ne ne ichi changma yore mini nebar upshine jagrese be ichi yore jesa da dini inza to ko ta ba jungo dadi bene nga zo so na zarup shina be so na yo de kale karchi oresene nga shi yore nga sa nga mo sa khorwa da namgin namgin nga juben de nga shu sai gore nga gi khorong ge chik nga khorong ge denda shera ma shina nga khorong nubele tene da nube chi li gore nga shu sa yo de 제가 소나기네 가르치기를 했으나 미디기 미소나가 미지요라 미디 민지 티고래 민지 티제 안디 슈고디 파 뚝세 캡제 비니 신강래 두스카와 쇼르와 신가와다샤 제 세가지 디는 나지 사시네 토와리 강래 나리 푸 캡제 디는 딱선 둥거라 양지 나지 둥거 두시는 숨시 둥 자고래 제가 디자스네 소나 자고래 민 소나가 미시어와 미디 민디고 슈구지가라 인디도 슈구디 두세 답지 잡제 데네 까와지고 두시 신까와 여러와 데네 까와간 두시네 데네 세가지 케제 슈구갈 봐 데네 나든제 데네 안디지 토어데 쥐에 토어지어와 토어들이야 나후 잡제 데네 딱 둥거래 세상아게 둥거래 데네기 둥제 파세가 봐 두 담샤고래 세상데 소나 자로 아딘 나 된제 남윤데 토와들세 토와 하말 지어로 와디 슈세 딜라 포스 딘 둥고래 남윤이 아사고르 남윤 사고래 디사고래 남 말말 그런 믹스지 요리제 남윤 사 망부 사고르 호롱사 나 사고르데 대징아 줍세 디조 그런 아 망부 사에도 데네
Healing techniques such as the recitation of knowledge mantras is something that was very beneficial. These days, though, the ability to utilize these techniques is largely lost because back then there was no alternative. So people had to rely on these methods and thereby could experience the healing results and therefore would have faith and trust in these methods. These days, people have access to regular Western medicine, so these techniques have largely been lost. But an illustration that I remember seeing was that when someone has a toothache, then they would recite a particular mantra many times, and then eventually they would write their name on a piece of paper, crumple that piece of paper, crumple it up or fold it up, and place it by a beam of wood. And then they blow, who's having recited a lot of mantras, and they'd blow onto a hammer and hammer that or nail that piece of paper with their name on it into the beam. So because of the extent of the mantras that have been recited, and with their mind of faith, and then engaging in this ritual, this activity, then their toothache would heal. Likewise, if someone, say, cuts their wrist and they're bleeding, they would also recite a specific mantra many times and then blow on the the wound, and it would heal.
Dine menga so me. Jisa nga duen che so laba kala nga duen nga pu jep che dine laba num ko ma na num cho yo num ko je dine lu we ne laba ka chi go ma ne. Ane menga se ne me shuk chi ma ta je di ga la kang bo jep na ane ka chi go ma ne. Jisa kang ba me ba che kang bo di sha ba na kang bo chi go ma ne. Jisa nganzu di chikari chigresine mi kashirya de me jagoyo re de menga de nganzu menju je de me ja mangbu yong re de je ane kashi de chi cha chou so me de ma wa sha jin je le ge du den cha shen de jin du jin ne je yong go de ye ma de wa de mangbu chi go re de yan sa sha yo ma de sa yam sha yo ma de me ringa la na da nga cha sang lo wa ringa na le me nga re ma ja le chi nga ta ma cha sang le ringa la go mi.
Then also there were medicinal mantras that one would blow, say, on your hands or on your feet. And then if you've blown it on your hands, you could put your hands into boiling water, so water that's so hot that it's rolling from the heat, and you wouldn't burn your hand. Or you could walk on hot coals and you wouldn't burn your feet. Or even lick metal that was white hot and you wouldn't burn your tongue. So these were medicinal mantras that one could recite and then would offer protection in this way.
Da dinige jisa ringa ase dinige thone nga sa ne nga dumne shenyi dunga se da ganga se da dinige anjige mangbo junggo ra dine za dinige ringa duke ge ringa bu jurshine an she de jige shenyi ganga se da an digi dubtu wa yong sho se de dirwa de ringa yo sho se da.
Here one's expressing the aspiration, may I recite knowledge mantras that accomplish, may through these many different types of knowledge mantras that there are, may I help alleviate suffering of beings.
Isa severum chege diwa nga mangu jina diwa chige langbo chido sungyen do da andine kenguru ro shwe da diwa chi dine nga mangu de chese dine ge nga dike pa jang we ne sosolya an dikbe daya da an chig dine ge du shonggo ba za da rim je du sine mangu ni ka zel chi mangu ji ya ro do de chese dine ge da disu donda dire da du chin nga dike pa sosura chi tong ba na sosuge da dine ge chig chi pa chi lo ba ine sosolya an chige 강아 세야단 디유주야게 되네 판도 연구가 봐서 다 되네게 바샤샤야게 돈달래야 두신지 나교로 와.
And similarly, Lama Zopa, he would write mantras on sometimes quite surprising surfaces, such as the statue of a kangaroo or the statue of an elephant. So he'd write these mantras with a motivation that through him writing the mantra and being seeing and perhaps reading the mantra, may their suffering be overcome, may they gain freedom from suffering. The line ends with effective medicine. So the aspiration is, may medicine be effective and heal the suffering of beings.
Dene basam shin da ni se de da basam shin da dene ge basam shin yong o yu sho se basam shin da basam shin se de da shin se kyabar pa ba jo re so da basam shin se de shin de la de ne a zo ge yue je ga re go ge na shin de le de ne tu yong go re je le so so ga re go be ne shin de le de yong go re se da basam shin se de ni basam shin an ji me do da debu punsun soba yeba ngazulya ngazul hada milia jingazu tukin kare yo goguine dine su 주용 거래 시리디 지산 되는 자디 바섬 신도 뭐 요쇼 디 바섬 신도 규르치네 안시안이 그런들 강아 가르고이나 그런 지고에 튕긴되게 쭉 되네 강아되게 세위기다 되게 유튜브와 용어쇼서 ale ne jidan di dona di baro garsen deletene digi tuya da kozu yeji di kanga se ya dirwa dan koi shika ga jwa de.
Then the third line, a wish-fulfilling tree. So as with before, with the wish-fulfilling jewel, here, rather than a jewel, it's a tree is referenced to fulfill the wishes of all beings, whether human or God or gods. Whatever their wishes are, may I fulfill those wishes.
이네 이상다 바섬 예신세디 나 저게 다디디 지게 레유다 내가 저 라마 쳬베 초신 공대 갑라 바섬 신공고로 바섬 신가야 안데 지게 슈슈여 받선 세트업 투스 공고로 아디나지 네 제산 되네게 바섬 신세데 되네게다 용고레세레 나다 바섬 신데 제보다 매도다 풍선 소바 디가 가레 줍네 디기 줍투야 주야되게 지레세 지금 지금 좀 지게 저나랴 지금 지송야 저 바섬 신세데 가원이 기고서 계세딩한테 점블링 사치라기 다디나신 바신디파 만주게 고거나 신나신시 도시 배 링부슈치게 근데 제디 가월에서는 숨지자숨 하여서 될래야 되지래 제가 디네 레디도 디네 안에 제부디 예닐하디기 사고라체 바섬 신기 대우초라다 제제 예닐레더와 원마요 말와 제가 고거나 신기 제부디 고드마도 오드와요 말와 어디나시다 바섬 신디 링부슈치게 되는 제부디 사상 숨지자숨게 하디기를 생겨래시래 진사요는 다디 머니 간수 숨자서 월마 안지되게 라마 인세들 하지래 이 라마인 대 라마 인디게 단 요다시거래지 숨자서 라디게야 진사디 신딩 안죄레스 또 먼저 사지 간게 장안주 신디에스 진사 교수 제부디 교수는 지금 말했어 디디 요다시거래 진사 디고 아는 제가 라마인다 숨자서 라디게 마쇼거래지
The wish-fulfilling tree, you'll know from the visualization in the Lama Chöpa, where there in the Guru Puja, one visualizes this wish-fulfilling tree that it fulfills the wishes of all beings. And that is the meaning here, that one has the aspiration to fulfill the needs of all beings. So there's the one visualization that you'll be aware of from the Lama Chöpa. But there's another explanation you would have perhaps heard too, which is from the Abhidhamma, where there is a tree that grows right up into the God realms, in particular in the God realm called the Heaven of the 33. Now this wish-fulfilling tree, its fruit is born in the Heaven of the 33, but the tree trunk and its roots are below that, actually in the realms of the demigods. So the demigods are not very impressed with this, because in their world, they have this large tree, but only its roots and trunk. All its fruits are born in the realm above, in the God realm, the Heaven of the 33. So they become particularly upset about this. They see it, this tree is ours, but we're not gaining the benefits, you are. We want the fruits from you. And then they embark on warfare with the God realms. The demigods start war over the fruits of this tree.
나중에 류진 남기 죄도를 기르스네. 다 류진 세대 샘제 다 죄도를 걸어서 되바 나신 가래 여배나 차산되게 쭉퇴비게 아니 가데 되게 규어쇼 세대 뒤로다 말함 자야 돼. 류진 남기 죄도르규.
And then finally, a wish-fulfilling cow for every sentient being.
네, 잘했어요. 예, 나디네 도나라 가르고고스는 아주게 샘전델이야 안지게 가르 고베디게 차산 디나시 규르시에 아주리아 강한 가르시고선 소수게 되버디 마루바지 고야데 마라제 아니 마라디 아주 강아지 지거로 와지 강한 나소 용고래 그래서 디 강아에서야 샘전레 가르 고고에나 강아 가르 쓰고나 다지게 권소 예제 가르고나 권소로 로바 가르고이네 차상 되는 규르시네 가르고바디게 마디 규르시야 권소야 강아세 투와주 강아세 투야다 디기 투투바쇼 세디 지산 되는게 삼대 몰람자야도 몰람제고로.
From these two verses, we see the Bodhisattva expressing the aspiration to fulfill the needs of beings, whatever they may be. So for ourselves, we can take this as to both wherever there is a need for physical help or assistance, may I be there for others. And where there's a material need within my capacity, may I be there for others.
지산 디주 차상도 심몰름 제디 직몰름 냥주 장주샘 냠len 제바 장주샘 제바라 당보 초사 집장 네 개와报도며 봐서 우인자 디네게 몰름 제침보쇼 제자고래서 디네게 몰름 제디게 때가리스 자고래서 군노를 마서나 지산 샘전리아 샘전 디기 샘전 탐질레 디기데 되나 샘베게 지기 잠복하면다 샘제 동화다 자고도 지사도 동화다 말한다서 동화 지차상 자고도 샘전 탐질 동화라 자나세베게 지산 인지공 인지 잠바다 인지 지산 샘전 탐질 동화디에 녜세 오도 녜 판도 루고도 강한 녜세 오 샘다에도 지산 디네게 군노 토네 지산 나 샘가 디디 규르시 샘제게 동화 세워쇼 콘솔레 디기 주고쇼 지산 샘전리아 잠바공 샘쟁이 디기용을 쇼서 디기공 샘쟁라 동아지 오도스비 니지공 대한 샘쟁이 디기대한 내 주비 샘쟁이 동아대 내 세긴스도다 내세라 간세고서는 어다 칸바메가 되래 칸바 규제 동아세 안데 가 고야가 예제메가 줄 예제교 링고간달레 링도교 강아세야다 디네 삼바고간다 삼바교 주신고를 주신 규제 누시네 몰람 라서 규르싱에 대기두야 나신지 강아세야 되게 세긴 심백에 두시네 다 몰람 자이로 몰람 자이디 지상 공로를 봐서 몰람 자이게 또 슈기 가르치려는 것은 샘제라 미베 잠바 샘제 동아자도 니체 샘제의 동아다 동아다 강아 가르는 뇌세기 샘쟁이 디기디에 뇌 두긴 세비 라삼 디 곰네 안데 지그 삼다도 안디소 몰람 두시네 몰람 제거를 받아.
We look for these two verses we've looked at tonight and the final verse from last week, these three, they express various ways from the Bodhisattva. May I fulfill the needs of beings. Whatever their needs are, may I have the capacity to fulfill those needs. And for these prayers to really fulfill their purpose, the motivation with which they are made is of great importance, and not just for bodhisattvas, but for ourselves too. So therefore, when making prayers such as these, initially generate the required motivation, and whilst reciting the prayers, use the recitation of these aspirations to strengthen your motivation. And the motivation, of course, is, may all beings abide in happiness, a happiness that is freed from all suffering and problems. May beings never experience problems again, but abide solely in happiness. And this aspiration, love and compassion, this aspiration is actually my responsibility to fulfill. I see it as my responsibility to help beings gain freedom from problems and difficulties and thereby abide in lasting happiness. And with such a motivation, one expresses the wish, may, for those who need a guide on a land journey, or a guide when crossing water, or some material support such as a bridge to cross water, or as we saw tonight, dry land when crossing water, or somewhere warm and comfortable and safe to abide, or whatever material needs one has, such as food and clean water. Whatever it is that beings need, may I fulfill those needs, may I do so readily and without hesitation.
아데네게 아데 몰람 도스네 다 몰람 디게베 마세 야침모 슈우지까지 체제까지 도스네 자고레서 당한주 되네게 당 소수게 개발해서 가르치네 몰람 되네게 당한주 도스 몰람 다 전주센바디게 도스게 나면서 당한주레 데 아니 예스지와라 침비게 당한주 차상이야 전주센 냠는 제발라 되네게 몰람 접치 당번 초사 득자는 고월 시장 몰람 되네데 자고고레 세정한줄이야 도시네 남들로 있는 거로 나 당한주네 되네 강투투데 도시네 몰람 자고고로 왔다 이네 당한주 다 제투민도 왔다 이네 당한주게 되네게 제 몰람 잡투에게 배주제야다 되네게 탑시시고로 왔다.
So I encourage you not to allow your way of thinking to remain narrow and confined, thinking of prayers like this, they're beyond ordinary capacity, they're pointless. Rather, come to see that they serve an important point of expanding your mind beyond the limits of imagination and one's experience in this life. But come to recognize that great beings such as Bodhisattvas, what they do is for us, or what they are capable of, is beyond what we think is possible. So by making prayers such as these, we strive to expand our rather limited or narrow way of thinking and develop a far more expansive, broader mind, and thereby be able to help beings ever more.
Gabriel ngana juge molam dini duya meba molam ra japna jeke duya mebe duya medigen nga khangbo chimbo ju gyuwa shos na khangbo gyurtuya se mewa zada duya medigen memba molam janna de jeke pando khayo mara sambege samra yonsigirwa zada janju sembege molam jaya janju sem jebe gabli ne da dini ge semjen tamje sangyi sala guyeshe 아니 지게 심지어 탐지에 당보 상계설이야 고에 살제 되네 타마들 나랑 상계고 왕토바 지긴 스비 되네게 심지어 용고래 진짜 되네게 심지어 요때 이내 심지어 탐지 상계설 고에 소소라랑 지부 상마제 하야지 요 말바다 요 말에 만지 이내다 자주 심비 몰람세도 배 야채 뭐 휴지 되네게 몰람 야채 뭐 저도 닝도불 마서는 배 닝도 휴지 양아서 셈결로 인도 마선의 시우 인도 체르고 걸어봐다. 제가 되네게 소소고 로다 인도 되게 반유가 체르줘야리야. 핑거로 봐. 되네게 뭐는 자치 못 자요. 제가 되네 인자다 지 강보고 알아 강보고 살링도 링고셔. 다 요보고 요보고셔서 뭐는 자도 소소기다. 샤리아 판도 강이 토능이 두비인 셈비게다. 인도로 마선의 시우지야. 이게 셈쇼다. 인도 게야리야. 핑거로 봐. 되네 로 장고고 봐. 제가 되네게 인도 어디등에 제투사 말에 삼삼지 용구이나 되네 저기 상주고 토투에 발시 책으로 봐디 제투고 말아 봐. 제가 되네 자디 차사다 인도 차사지 셈제 너나라 가르치는 지긴 셈비 제투에 인도 지가서 끼고 봐. 인도도 차발라 나 두신 삼나다제 두신데 니 제마tum네 지파몰람 제게 두신 장도로 지게 누가 차 당고고 봐. 되네 자다 뭐 하서 몰람 잡세 뒤로와도 몰람 되네 지긴 인지긴스는 남자 지네데 지금이나라네 지긴 데스강아도 제마마도 민세지 용으로 받 시사디닝 아주 장기전 지기 진파 줄로 봐 야네 야도 섬다도 닝도도 셔셔 줘야게 해버리고 제가 되네서 소수게다 도시네 즉 몰람 자와디 소수기 닝도께당 소수기 닝도도 뉴베처럼 고미하게다 야네 야도 섬다도 뉴베처럼 고로 와디 디도 나를 숨고로 와다 제오레세디
The training that's being advised here, we shouldn't misunderstand and think, well, one can pray for anything and therefore one will get it. So you can go home and pray that you get a new house and a nice big one, and then suddenly you'll be gifted a fabulous new home. This is not what this is about at all. Rather, we're taking an approach to what seems impossible, but using a technique such as this in a skillful manner, we will eventually be able to achieve what does seem impossible. So there are different types of motivations of bodhisattvas. One of them is the sincere wish. May I lead all sentient beings to enlightenment. And only once each and every other sentient being has attained enlightenment will I achieve enlightenment. So there is such a motivation that some bodhisattvas develop. In reality, and they will know this, that is not possible. By them cultivating the bodhisattva paths within them, being of ever more service to others, they will attain enlightenment far quicker than many beings. But their aspiration is so intent on fulfilling the needs of others, they are sincerely content with being last. So even whilst they know that this will not happen, it is an expression of their determination to ease the suffering of others, their lack of self-interest, but rather the dominance of concern for the welfare of others is being expressed in this way. So for ourselves, when we make prayers like this, we should understand that as long as one's not just merely reciting words, but one is expressing this with heartfelt intent, one is developing our strength of mind, the courage, our inner courage, and challenging this the current confines of believing that we are not capable. These are current confines where we do not at all recognize our eventual limitless capacity. So by thinking in ways which seem unbelievable or almost magical, we are actually starting to develop an appreciation for what the limitless capacity we will eventually have. And in fact, by expressing these aspirations, we are in the process of developing that capacity. So we are only training now. Prayers such as these are entirely on the level of prayer or aspiration. But this is where we start. Later in lives to come, the capacity of the bodhisattva will be developed within us, and we will be able to express ourselves in these ways in reality. So here, by making such heartfelt prayers, we are challenging our limited view, the narrowness of the confines within which we live. But this is all part of developing our courageous attitude to help us progress towards becoming bodhisattvas, where what now seems unimaginable will then be easy to achieve.
Sulami tiniki molam jap, jap lama koron diaba chicken loma, and the koron chick lama diaba che, hanging lama jesu shows molam jedina, chick lama, Jawakundo yada lama said kidina lame jesu shusha lami dusine, my church of horrible shows in molam ja, diniki javundum, lamigi molam ja, down lomi koronga lama de la diniki jesu molam jad, diniki. Nibe Tule, Maobana, Deniki Loma Digelia, and Gabriela Deniki, Ganga Chedu, Lamigi, Tetnema, Jiki Molamji, Molam Nibe Doble, and Deniki, Junction Honsolia, Ganga Setua, then the young Yuruadi.
When one makes prayers such as these, some of them it'll be many lifetimes until we can actually fulfill them. Others, much sooner. Those lifetimes will come much sooner. In another area, though, where prayers are important and can be fulfilled, is when one has a deep and sincere faith in one's spiritual teacher, to make heartfelt prayers, to continue for lifetimes, to meet one's teacher, to recognize them as the exalted being that they are, and to be open and receptive to their guidance. So by making such prayers, one's lama, who has qualities and capacity, through the dependent arising of the lama's quality and capacity, and one's a sincere, heartfelt aspiration, through that dependent arising, in lives to come, one will continue to meet and be guided by one's teacher. So both aspects are required, the qualities in the teacher, but also the effort from the side of the student, the sincere prayer from the side of the student. So in this way, prayers such as those are fulfilled.
All right,
And thank you very much. Thank you very much.